Hi there, and welcome to a walkthrough of Predictable. This is Predictable 6, and this is the current version as of December 2022. So today my goal is to walk you through the app, not just to cover some of the basic aspects, but also to talk through the settings in more detail to highlight the ways that you can customize and personalize Predictable for yourself or for your client. Okay, we're currently on the main page. Down the bottom is the keyboard. Above that, in the blue strip, are 5 items in the word prediction strip. Above that is the message window. To the right of that are 5 quick keys, including the important speak button. You have orange or salmon colored phrases which sit in the history, which pull the most recent spoken phrases and keep them up there for you to reuse. And in the yellow on the other side, you have words or phrases that have been taken from your favorites category, which sit in the phrase bank, and I'm going to show you where that is shortly. So you have feature keys next to the message window, such as the speak button. Here you've got drafts. We've not got anything in there, so it's not loading up at the minute. We have the settings icon, and we have also some feature keys down in the bottom right on the keyboard there as well. Okay, so as you can expect, I start typing and the word prediction is going to predict what I'm trying to say. So for example, my name is Rebecca. I can speak that aloud.
My name is Rebecca.
And I can also save that to drafts if I wanted to. I can do some other things like sharing, which I'm going to show you later when we go through into settings. You can see that phrase has now
My name is Rebecca.
moved into history. So if I wanted to repeat that, I could just tap on that there. I can either clear the last word that I've spoken, or I can clear everything that's in the message window. Again, I can adjust that based on my settings, so I can set that up to suit my needs. Down on the bottom in the keyboard, you have another button here, which I'm pressing on now, which you can see highlighted, and that takes you to the categories where I've saved phrases that I might want to use, for example, for an appointment, or if I had a meeting or a conversation, or phrases that I just like to say all the time.
Things I like.
So for example, in this category, I have some different content for some quick common phrases, conversational supports, and so on. In the favorites category, you have some sort of quick everyday phrases, and they populate that yellow strip that we saw back on the keyboard page, so that
see you soon,
etc. They all come from the phrases section. So I'm going to show you how to add something to the favorites section. What you do is you go into the category, you tap on the pen icon, you tap on add phrase, and you can write in what you want to have there. I'm going to put one in so I can say my name, and I can attach a symbol to that, or I can take a photo with my camera on the device or from my picture gallery. I'm going to just choose something that's already there and then come back. And when I'm finished with that, I can save it. And when I finish editing in that category, I can press the check mark, and that's now saved that in my categories. So that's ready to use. So next time I want to come into favorites, then I can...
My name is Rebecca.
I can use that as well. Okay, now let's go into settings. I'm going to show you some of the really important settings options that you have available. Here is the account section where I can delete my account or log out of my account. Here is the speech section of the settings. This is really important. This is where you can choose the voice that's going to best suit you or your client when they're using Predictable. You have a whole range of voices available on your device. I'm on an iPad right now, so I can see all of the voices that I've got access to. So if I want to, for example, switch to a British voice, I can do that. And here are the voices that are available on the iPad. Now, some of those come through automatically to Predictable, and others you can download on the iPad, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. and use as well. So for example, I'm going to use Serena, and I'm going to use the premium version, which is the highest quality version of the voices.
Hello, my name is Serena Premium.
Okay, so I'm going to choose that. I can also hear if I have banked my voice using either Acapella, my own voice service, the Model Talker service, Speak Unique, or the Voice Keeper service, I can input my credentials here and use that voice instead. They all work in a similar way, where you use the username and password provided not by us but by the voice banking company, and you input that there and you download that voice, and then that acts as the voice that you use. If I'm using one of the device voices, I can adjust the rate, I can adjust the pitch, and so on. Here are some features that influence how the speak button works. Now that might sound obvious, but what you can do is you can adjust whether you want the speak button on the main screen to either speak the message aloud or to show it. Now, I'm going to turn it on just for a minute and come back to the screen and show you how that works. So if I was, instead of wanting to speak aloud, hi, maybe I'm on the bus, somewhere noisy, or I want to have a private conversation, I can instead of pressing speak, can press show. And what it will do is it will enlarge and
Testing new phrase.
invert that phrase so that it shows up on the screen rather than having it speak aloud. Okay, I'm going to turn that off for now so that I'm not, so I've got it back on the speak. You have some other features there which influence how the speak button works, whether it speaks everything or just speaks after the cursor or after you finish a sentence. Another group of settings that I think are useful to look at are in the next box, and I recommend trying the feature Clear After Speak. By turning that on, so that it turns green, the message window will clear after I speak each time, so that I'm not having to manually delete a word or clear the message window. There are a couple of other features here, like highlighting each word as you speak, and so on. I can also turn on or turn off how the speech function works for the categories and phrases that we were in before. So I currently have it on where it will say the phrase aloud each time I tap on it, or it will read aloud the category as I tap on it. So I can turn those on or off. Here in custom pronunciation, I can edit how predictable, or how the speech engine rather, pronounces words, and that's useful, for example, for names and other words in that sense. I can also adjust and add in custom abbreviations, which again is useful for when I want to have some shortcuts, so I don't have to type out the whole phrase. Like here I've got one that says BRB, so that if I just type that in predictable, it won't say BRB, it'll say be right back. So I can adjust that and build up a set of custom abbreviations. Right, the next set of settings that you come to are the accessibility settings. Direct touch, which is just using the iPad screen with your finger or with a pointer, has two features that might be useful to try. One's time delay and the other's force delay. Time delay acts where you have to press down a button for a predetermined time before it triggers, whereas force delay will freeze the screen and lock you out for a set time. Both are useful to try if you're finding that a tremor or other movement difficulties are causing mishits, or it's difficult to trigger the key that you want. You can also turn on the function where the whole screen acts like a giant switch. I've got that turned on now, so I'll show you how that works. Here you can see I'm now scanning through the different sections of Predictable, and when I get to what I want, I tap the screen like it was a switch and trigger it that way. This is exactly how it looks if you have on another setting, which is switch access. So if I was to turn on scanning, I can either have it with one switch or two switch, and I can adjust the rate and so on. Head tracking, available on some of the newer iPads that have the true depth cameras, allows you to use your head movements like a pointer to move around the screen. This is great, and you can choose a whole lot of different ways then that you trigger your selection. It can be just by choosing a time for how long you'll dwell or hover on your chosen key or letter. But you can also choose a range of other facial gestures that you might use as your selection mode. So that could be smiling or frowning, whatever you could manage physically to be able to do. The other very exciting access method that you can use is eye tracking, and Predictable is optimized to be used with the Irisbon Hero, which is an external camera that you can plug into your iPad. So you're able to use Predictable using eye tracking after you complete the calibration, and again you're able to choose a range of selection triggers depending on what you're able to best manage. There are plenty of options then for adjusting how the scanning looks if you're using switch or the screen scanning method. You can also do a couple of other things. You can turn on audible keyboard clicks if that's useful, and so on. And then another one that's useful right down the bottom is called floor hold. Floor hold can be set up as automatic or manual. I had it on automatic, and you would have heard before the phrase pop up, testing new phrase. The reason that we have it set up is that you're able to play either from a library of phrases that you can manage yourself, and you can see those down the bottom, which will trigger either at a predetermined time when you're typing, so that with the aim that it may help reduce interruptions or help you keep your turn. If you don't have it on automatic, then you can put it on manual and you can trigger that yourself. Okay. We saw some of the gestures that you could use with the head tracking, and you're also able to use that independently, and you can set up what we call gesture recipes to either select an action or a category and therefore a phrase that you want to trigger using a combination of facial gestures, and you can use them in combination with whichever ones you're able to reliably do. And you can create a whole section of recipes. I've got two set up here now that I trigger using the camera on the iPad when I have this feature turned on. Right, let's talk about theme and appearance. There's loads you can do to customize how Predictable looks. One of the things that people often don't know about is that you can adjust what your home screen presents as. I've got it as the keyboard now, but you could have chosen to have that grid view with the categories and phrases. So that can sometimes be a useful point to start on if somebody's transitioning from another app or program that's sort of built in a grid or built with phrases and categories and content and vocabulary set up in that way. If I'm sticking with the keyboard view, I can choose from a selection of some sample templates that we have available in Predictable, or I can go through and customize each element one by one, adjusting both font size and color and also background shading as well. We talked about the feature keys, and I think this is a really important part of the app to explore because it enables you to see some of the more interesting features that might be useful for people. Now, one thing to note is that the feature keys at the top of the screen are limited to 5. So if you want to use some of the features that aren't enabled, you need to disable or hide some of the other features. So I'm going to turn off delete last word because I've got delete all, and that's quite useful for me. And I'm going to turn off drafts because I want to use the share button to be able to send emails, and I want to turn on phone calls. Here are some of the other features that you have. So I could choose to have my multi-language feature, or I could put handwriting on. I also have the option to add those down the bottom for the feature keys that sit on the keyboard. This time you're limited to 4. So I've already got the speak key up the top. Sometimes people put it down the bottom because it's easier to reach. But in this case, I'm going to put an alert bell instead. And instead of floor hold, I'm going to put handwriting. I can also switch all of my keys over to the left if I'm left-handed, or if my left hand is easier to use. And I'm able to adjust the skin tone of all of the symbols in the app. Word prediction settings are fairly straightforward. You're able to choose from either a British or an American corpus if you're using Predictable in English. And you can turn on things like spell check, autocorrect and auto-completion. But often I've observed that the word prediction itself compensates for difficulties that you might use those features for otherwise, and keeps it pretty quick. You can turn off or allow profanities depending on your preferences, and you can adjust the number of predictions. We've got it on 5, which is how it comes when you receive Predictable, which seems to be about the right amount of words to be predicted. Here you can also turn off so it doesn't save your history and delete your history. And you can manage self-learned words. So if, for example, the word prediction, you'd repeatedly done the same typo and the word prediction had learnt that typo, you could adjust that so it unlearned that word. Keyboard options. Apart from the common QWERTY option, you can choose from an ABCD keyboard, a high frequency keyboard, a 10-key keyboard, which arranges the keys across larger keys, which you then tap to then go into a sub menu, or you can choose one of the native keyboards that are available on your device. It is possible to use an external Bluetooth keyboard, and some people do like to use that as well. So you can either have that for typing, or some people use it for shortcuts, where they can use some of the function keys, for example, on a keyboard to quickly move around and use Predictable. Here you can also manage the emojis that are available in the app and adjust the message that plays when you select those. In grid layout, it's pretty simple as it sounds. You can choose the numbers of columns and rows that are displayed, and you can do things such as hide the symbols or hide the message window as well. On some devices, you're able to make phone calls by tapping a button in Predictable. It then starts the phone call, and then you need to come back to Predictable, but then you can use your text-to-speech voice from the device to continue having the conversation. Bear in mind, if you're using a voice-banked voice, that you will need to choose a secondary voice from the device that is used on phone calls, as phone calls cannot be used with voice-banked voices. Here I can add contacts. If I wanted to add mum, for example, I could add in my mum's phone number or FaceTime ID so that I could contact her using that. And finally, we have a multi-language option where you're able to choose, in addition to English, one of 26 or 27 secondary languages that you can use and you can switch to and use in the app. Right, so I'm going to come back to the main screen. You can see, for example, that we have head tracking enabled, and I also have the gesture speak enabled, so it's trying to trigger that, which is great. And you can see, for example, all my feature keys switched over to the left where I had moved them.
Hi everyone.
And I can use it that way. If I want to stop the eye tracking, I can press on that X, that's the quick access mode, and turn that off. So I've done that now. You can see we now, for example, have the share button up on the screen. And what the share button does is enables you to take the text in your message window and then attach it to other apps that you have. So if you had WhatsApp, for example, or email or messages, then that text could be used and you could carry it through or push it through to that app. You can also see, for example, I added the handwriting option. So I could, instead of typing, I would be able to write instead there. I've got my alert file, which I've attached obviously to a cough, and I can use that as well. So I hope that's been really useful. That's a quick walkthrough of Predictable 6, and we look forward to walking you through some new features in the future. Thank you, bye.